For as long as I can remember, my life has revolved around my family's financial struggles. Silverwood, a quaint town with narrow streets and cozy homes, had become both my sanctuary and my prison. My father's failing business, once a proud establishment, had turned into a relentless cycle of debt and despair. Therese Street, lined with cheerful houses and smiling neighbors, felt like a mockery of my reality. I often found myself feeling like a ghost, watching life unfold without me. My father, once a vibrant man full of dreams, now wandered through the days like a shadow, his eyes filled with worry and regret that seeped into our family like an unwelcome fog. I was 30 years old, burdened with responsibilities that should have felt far too heavy for my shoulders to carry. Each time my father stood at my bedroom door, wringing his hands, a flicker of dread ignited in my chest. "Amelia," he would begin, his voice quavering like dry leaves in a whispering wind, "I need your help again." Those words felt like an anchor, dragging me deeper into the depths of unspoken pain. "How much this time, Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady, masking the turmoil that rolled within me. "I just need to cover the rent for a couple of months," he would say, his eyes darting away, unable to meet mine. Every time his words escaped his lips, it felt like 10 pounds of guilt dropped into my chest, stirring a storm of frustration that echoed in the silence of our broken home. "It's only for now. Once the business picks up again," he trailed off, the familiar hopeful lie hanging in the air between us like a noose. I braced myself as I calculated the sum in my mind. For 4 years, I had watched my savings, once so promising and full of potential, dwindle away. That accumulated $40,000 had once been my dreams, woven into the fabric of my future, a house of my own, travel, independence. Yet here I was, pouring my future into the black hole of my father's misfortunes. "You know, I don't have that kind of money just lying around," I reminded him, though I knew the sentiment would land on deaf ears. "But you always find a way, Amelia. You're so good at managing money." The desperate tone in his voice gnawed at my insides. I felt like a puppet dancing on strings, driven by guilt, by duty, by love for someone who seemed to forget that it was not just about him. I would take a deep breath, forced to swallow the bitterness swirling in my throat. "I guess I can give you what I have saved," I would inevitably say, an unyielding weight of resignation settling on my shoulders. It made me sick to feel trapped like this, to know that I was sacrificing everything for a father who did not even see the sacrifices I made. Somewhere deep down, resentment began to grow, coiling tightly around my heart, squeezing until it was hard to breathe. I wanted him to notice me, to hear the silent screams hidden behind my polite smiles as I handed him yet another check, a simple piece of paper that represented years of hard work and shattered dreams. "Thank you, Amelia," he would say, still unable to meet my gaze, the hint of shame etching deeper lines in his forehead. I would nod, offering him the thin veil of encouragement I could muster, hiding my hurt behind a mask of understanding. Then there was my brother, a cascading waterfall of charm and charisma, drowning me under an ocean of his achievements. I would watch him glide through life with ease, laughter tumbling from his lips like a cascade, leaving a trail of bright-eyed admirers in his wake. It was as if the universe conspired to grant him every advantage while my hard work gathered dust in the shadows. "You know, you should really come out with us tonight," he'd say, a broad grin splashed across his face as if I were merely an accessory to his life. "It's going to be epic. Everyone will be there." The excitement in his voice felt like rasping nails against my skin. "I can't," I would whisper, my heart heavy with weariness. "I need to help Dad with the bills." The disappointment that flickered across his face felt like salt pouring into an open wound. "Amelia, you work too much. You need to relax. Live a little, you save everyone else, but who is saving you?" As if I were the one in need of saving. His words dug deeper into the chasm of resentment growing inside me, especially when I saw how he was celebrated for trivial accomplishments while I remained scrappy and neglected. I wanted to scream that I was the one sacrificing my future, that I was the unsung hero holding our family together. Each time I watched him be celebrated for his latest escapade or charm, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. Feeling invisible and unappreciated gnawed at me, a relentless whisper that echoed through my thoughts. I would retreat to my room often, curling up on my worn-out bed, whispering to the walls my silent prayers as if they held the power to change my situation. "Why can't you see me?" I would ask the shadows, feeling utterly alone in a house filled with people who should have understood. One night after one of my brother's celebrated outings, he sauntered into the house carrying the intoxication of carefree joy around him like a shroud. He flopped onto the couch, arms stretched wide, a lazy smile plastered on his face. "Hey sis, you should have seen it. We partied like there was no tomorrow." His exuberance felt like nails on a chalkboard, grating against the raw essence of my sacrifice. I offered a tight smile, my insides boiling. "Good for you, I'm happy you had fun." But even that sounded hollow, echoing my growing desperation. "Yeah, but you know how you always say we should live in the moment? You can join us next time." His enthusiasm felt off-key, a rhythm that didn't match the beat of my everyday life. Instead of responding, I turned back to my work in the dim light of my room, even as his laughter faded behind me. I stabbed the keys on my laptop, each click a rebellion, a manifestation of the frustration I could not voice. Still, a part of me yearned for his approval, wanting him to see me beyond the numbers and responsibilities that defined me. I closed my eyes, allowing the hot tears to escape, each drop a testament to my silent agony. "Why can't you see me?" I whispered again, hoping against hope that anyone would hear the scream beneath my words, the desperation in my heart. As the weeks crawled by, the bubbling resentment began to morph into something more potent. I would find myself replaying silent moments, my father's meek requests for money, my brother's careless disregard for my struggles. They were stealing pieces of me bit by bit, and I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if I stopped. Stopped giving, stopped sacrificing. The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. My mind raced with images of freedom, of a life that did not hinge on the whims of others, of a spirit unshackled from familial chains. Would I be the villain in their story if I chose to reclaim my life? The realization sent shivers down my spine. I would have to make them notice me, to make them feel the weight of my sacrifices. They had no idea what it felt like to be invisible, to drown silently beneath the waves of responsibility while they danced above the surface. I could feel it, the smoldering embers of vengeance beginning to spark, igniting dormant dreams and desires I had buried deep. I swore then that I would not remain invisible forever. My brother's laughter, my father's eyes, I would make them see me, truly see me, until the knife in my gut felt like a blade no more. I still remember the smell of fried onions wafting through the kitchen that morning, clinging to my clothes like a forgotten memory. I stood at the stovetop with the sound of sizzling filling the silence. The grease spat a few rogue drops onto my forearm, and I barely felt the sting over the roiling emotions inside me. It wasn't hunger or thirst that consumed me. It was a burning frustration that had been simmering for far too long. I glanced out the window where the sun blared down on my neighborhood, illuminating the mundane, peaceful routine of everyday life that felt so far removed from my own. My heart raced as I watched my brother's sports car pull into the driveway, its sleek body glistening under the sunlight like a predator ready to pounce. I could feel the thud of resentment pounding in my ears, a drum of anger signaling the beginning of an internal battle. Must be nice, I mumbled to myself as I turned back to the frying pan, gripping the spatula like it was a lifeline. Only moments before, warmth had enveloped me while cooking, but now a cold chill crept through the kitchen. I could only imagine how he casually tossed aside the stunning monthly payment without a second thought, while I toiled endlessly just to keep my head above water. I let out a shaky breath and returned to the task in front of me, but my mind wandered. Just then, the front door creaked open. "Amelia, you here?" My father's voice boomed, filled with that unmistakable blend of urgency and entitlement that made my skin crawl. "Kitchen?" I shouted back, the force of my vocal cords echoing my building anger. I looked at the sizzling onions, taking a moment to swallow the lump growing in my throat. I wanted everything to be perfect, every detail in order so I could somehow push back the rush of resentment, but just like the perfectly cooked onions beginning to burn, I knew I wouldn't manage to keep up that facade much longer. "Ah, there you are," he said as he entered the room, his hands already outstretched, fingers wiggling expectantly. "I could use your help again, sweetheart." "Help?" I echoed, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "You mean like money?" "Just a small loan to tide me over," he said, his tone light, as though asking for a couple of bucks for a coffee instead of cash that would throw me another $100 deeper into my crushing debt. I could not believe my ears. I felt the blood rush to my cheeks, pulsing hot and furious. "Dad, I cannot keep bailing you out," he waved a hand dismissively. "You're just jumping to conclusions again, Amelia. This is just a little hiccup, a small loan, you know how it is, it's just temporary. I will have the money back to you in no time." I leaned against the counter, feeling my heart pound painfully against my ribs. "You say that every time, every single month. Do you even realize how much I've helped you?" "Of course I do, and I appreciate it. You're my daughter. What kind of father would I be if I didn't lean on you a little?" His words felt like daggers, piercing through the thin skin of my patience. I closed my eyes for a moment, wishing I could turn back time to a moment before all this, before the loans, the fighting, before I had become a walking ATM for my father. Yet here I stood like a clown at his beck and call, shackled by the ties of familial loyalty that had begun to feel more like chains than love. My resentment grew as I imagined my brother outside, likely laughing at the sheer ridiculousness of my situation, his new car a symbol of all the ease I would never have. "Dad. It's not that simple. I have bills, rent, and a life that I am trying to keep together," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "Oh, come on, I told you it's just a temporary bump in the road. You don't owe anything to your brother, he has his own life." His fingers drummed against the countertop, impatience shining through in small, irritating gestures. I stared at him, taking a deep breath for control but feeling it dissipate like mist in the morning sun. "But I owe everything to you and Mom. First it was college, then those repairs you said were so urgent. And now you're asking for more. Those were circumstances, there's always something unexpected that comes up. You should have known that when you offered to help." "Offered?" I interjected, frustration spilling over. "I never offered. I was put in a situation where saying no was never an option. If I don't help, I become the bad guy, the ungrateful daughter." His eyes narrowed as if he was genuinely surprised at my outburst. "What's come over you? I'm still your father, you should have some respect. And you should realize that I'm an adult with responsibilities of my own." The words escaped out of me before I could collect them. Every emotion I had bottled up came rushing out like a flood, drowning any defiance or self-control I could have mustered. "Do you think I enjoy being the family bank? Do you think it makes me happy to scrape together every penny I have just to help you chase after the next shiny thing?" His face hardened, the surprise in his eyes shifting to anger. "That's enough, Amelia. You're making this a whole lot worse than it needs to be." I shook my head, feeling every fiber of my being swirl with an angry tide. "Worse? Don't you dare tell me this is worse when you stand there with empty hands and expect me to fill them. You can't just keep coming back and using me. I am not a safety net for your reckless spending." The words hung heavy in the air, thick enough to touch. My heart hammered in my chest as if daring me to hold my ground. I could practically hear my brother outside, revving the engine as if to showcase his success right at that moment. I pushed away from the counter, my own body feeling like a stranger, my voice a mixture of rage and resolution that threatened to unleash everything I felt. "I won't ask you again," I said, my words crisp like the snap of a branch. My father stepped forward. "You will help me, you know how I raised you." I held my gaze steady, forcing myself to stand tall, to carve out space for my own emotions in this chaotic landscape of family demands. "No, I am done being the doormat. No more loans, no more bailouts. I refuse to enable you any longer." "Then what do you want from me?" He challenged, his tone sharp, but I could hear the underlying tone of just a hint of desperation. I clenched my fists, feeling the nails dig into my palm like a physical manifestation of every emotion coiling inside me. I want to live my life without always looking over my shoulder. I want to feel safe in my choices without worrying whether you decided to buy the latest gadget or whether my brother suddenly needs a lift to some exclusive party because his car broke down. He took a step back, his face oddly pale, as if my words had struck some hidden nerve. "There are things you just do understand." "What is there to understand?" I exclaimed, my voice rising, filling the small kitchen with echoes of my indignation. "You raised me to be self-sufficient, yet you continue to depend on me for everything. You taught me responsibility, but you have made me feel guilty for simply wanting to be responsible for my own life." Silence pressed against us like a weight, the air thick with tension. It felt as if the walls themselves held their breath, cascading memories of small victories and defeats that were coming home to roost. I wanted so desperately to hold on to the sweet essence of family, but all I was met with was entitlement and disappointment. "Why are you acting like this?" he finally asked, his voice lowering as if unsure how to navigate the emotional terrain that had erupted between us. "Because I finally see it. I see that I have been a fool all this time. I have let myself be used, and I won't take it anymore." With that, I turned, not waiting for a reply, stomping toward the living room where the sun's rays pierced through the sheer curtains. I could see my brother chatting on the phone, nonchalantly flipping his keys, dangling them like a prize he never had to fight for. The contrast between us, the seemingly endless parade of needy expectations from my family, and his brazenly carefree approach to life felt like an emotional dagger. I wanted to scream, to shatter that calm image of my brother pulling off another win where my own victories felt like mere shadows. I felt a surge of clarity that morning, a clarity cut through the anger to reveal the truth that lay underneath. I was bound and determined to see a new path for myself, one where I no longer played the role of the doormat. It was time to reclaim my life, step away from the shadows, and finally surface, no longer a safety net but a warrior ready to fight for her truth. And as I stood there watching my family spiral deeper into the abyss of their choices, I knew deep down that I would not bow down to this any longer. The time for change had come. The moment had finally clicked into place, like the final piece of a puzzle that allowed me to see the full picture of my reality. And I was ready to break free. I stood in my empty room, the walls closing in as the muffled sounds of my family's laughter echoed through the household. It would be the last time I listened to their carefree chatter without a sense of resentment. In that moment of clarity, an electric pulse surged through my veins, igniting a long dormant fire within me. The abuse, the manipulation, and the financial exploitation had gone on long enough. It was time for a change, a reckoning that was long overdue. Taking a deep breath, I focused on the cold, hard numbers in my mind. $50,000. I had worked tirelessly, scraping together every cent over the last several years. Each deposit felt like a baby step toward freedom, towards breaking away from the suffocating grasp of expectations and demands that seemed to come from my father with the relentlessness of a tide rolling in. I had always been his safety net, his financial cushion, and now I would flip the script. Staring at my laptop screen, I accessed my bank account. My heart raced as I initiated the transfer of those funds into a separate account, an account where my family had no access. It felt like an act of defiance, a protest against a lifetime of being the scapegoat, the unflagging support while I received little in return. The numbers flickered across the screen, and as I hit the confirmation button, I felt a surge of empowerment rush through me. This is how the beginning of my revenge started. I had claimed ownership over my hard work, finally leaving them out of the equation entirely. With the money safely out of their reach, I sat on my bed and felt an unexpected wave of anxiety wash over me. I had called a family meeting under the guise of importance. My hands trembled slightly as I prepared for the confrontation that lay ahead. I craved a certain calmness, but my heart hammered like a drum, a wild creature trying to escape its cage. What if they refused to take me seriously? What if they turned on me as they had done countless times before? An image of my father materialized in my mind, that stern, demanding figure who was equal parts parent and taskmaster. His dark hair streaked with gray, the sharp lines on his face etched there by years of his own financial struggles would morph into a mask of rage, but I steeled myself. I needed to remain calm, to project a power that I had never owned before. I would not flinch. The time arrived for the meeting, and I led my family into the living room. They lounged on the couches, their casual attitudes a dark contrast to my burgeoning sense of purpose. "Thank you all for coming," I started. My voice wavered at first, but I forced it steady. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet today. I know it is important." There was a flicker of confusion in my father's eyes, coupled with a touch of irritation. I could almost hear him thinking what could possibly be so important that we couldn't discuss later. What's this about? My brother cut in, the skepticism dripping from his tone. His casual confidence, the way he leaned back with his arms crossed, made my blood boil. I am not doing this for you, I thought, trying to mask my internal battles with outward confidence. I could feel their watchful gazes, and suddenly it felt as though I were standing on a stage with the spotlight blaring down. I need to address the loans I have been giving you, Father. I do not want to lend you any more money. My words felt heavy and leaden, but I pressed on. You owe me $40,000. It's time to pay me back, or you stand to lose your precious business. The tension in the room shifted like a storm front rolling in, palpable and thick. The silence hung there, a curtain made of disbelief and shock. My father's eyes widened and then narrowed, assessing the reality of my ultimatum. You cannot be serious, he replied, his voice low and filled with disbelief. You are holding me to ransom over money? I have raised you better than this. Raised me? I shot back enraged. You raised me to be your fallback, your bank. This isn't about how you raised me. This is about how I have kept you afloat for years while I struggled to get by. I am done. Either you pay me back or that business of yours, the one you've built on my back, will be a memory. Gasps surrounded me. My brother's face morphed into confusion, his brows knitting together in outrage. Amelia, do you really think you can just walk away from this? You owe loyalty to this family. You are turning on us for money. We were at the crux of it, the raw nerve. A flicker of vindication surged through me. Loyalty? I laughed bitterly, the sound foreign to my own ears. What loyalty do I owe when you have drained me dry for so long? I do not need to take care of you anymore. I am not your financial crutch. My father shot up from his seat, his face flushed with anger, the muscles in his jaw working hard as he clenched his teeth. You would put your family at risk for your petty grudge? I can't believe you would even suggest cutting us off this way. For a moment, I felt guilt tug at my heart, whispering silly thoughts like, what if he has a point? But I shoved it aside with a fuming resolve. This isn't petty, it's justice. You need to feel what it's like to be on the edge of desperation, to understand the impact of your actions. You took advantage of me for so long, and now it is my turn to take back what you owe me. I will not be bullied by my daughter, he hissed, his powerful demeanor strained as he attempted to gain control over a spiraling situation. I built this business from the ground up, and I will find a way to recover from this. You don't understand the stakes. I will not be intimidated. Then do something about it. I challenged, adrenaline pumping through my body. Now I was the one with control, pulling the strings. I could feel my heart racing, electric energy coursing through my veins. You built your business, but I put in years of hard work to prop it up. You owe me this, and until you pay me back, I suggest you start thinking about your next steps. You have no idea what you are doing. He spit out through clenched teeth, and I could see desperation creeping into his eyes, a flicker of fear playing behind the facade of strength. You will regret this. But here's where the satisfaction lied. The tables had turned, and I was no longer the one moved by their guilt. Regret? I shrugged. If anything, I will be celebrating. You made your choices, knowingly playing with my future. Now it is time to face the consequences. The silence that followed my words echoed in the air. I had spoken my truth, and even though anger hung heavily in the room, I felt a relief in being completely honest. My brother shifted on the couch, unsettled. You are both being ridiculous about this. We are family, he decried, a desperate plea. Family? I scoffed. Family is built on trust and respect, neither of which exists here. Money has twisted everything. You think I want to destroy our family? No, I want to reclaim my life. That is a very different thing. I could see my father grappling for control, emotions churning inside him. This will ruin us, he shouted, fists balled in frustration. You have never sacrificed or been a part of the hard work, you just want to snatch at what you see before you. Sacrifice? I echoed incredulously, anger curling around my heart. I have sacrificed everything, my youth, my independence, and my dreams. You made me believe it was my duty to be there for you while you siphoned off my potential. Every time you called me up for a loan, I was pushed deeper into living someone else's life. I am done, finished. Enough, he yelled, and for a moment it felt like a challenge, like a line had been drawn, and now, unbeknownst to him, I stood firmly on my side. I will get the money, you just wait and see, you will take this back. But it was too late for that. The chain was broken, and all my life I had walked in the shadows of their expectations. Now their fear was suffocating them. I watched their faces sink into defeat as I dared to imagine a future without them, and it was intoxicating. The rage and power pulsing through me was a taste of freedom I had never imagined I could achieve. The specter of my perceived loyalty flickered away into nothingness, and I knew that whatever they planned or how they tried to wring this back ultimately belonged to me. Adapt or perish, they would have to learn that lesson. Each moment of urgency in their expressions reflected the truth. I had finally stepped out from under their oppressive weight and proclaimed my own destiny. It was a new day, my personal revolution. I had made my choice, and this time it was me who would steer the ship. I couldn't stop a smile from creeping across my face as their expressions shifted from disbelief to meager acceptance of reality, a painful realization that their time is up. This was the beginning of my liberation, and finally the clock was ticking, not just for me but for them too. The air in our house was thick, suffocating in its silence, punctuated only by the frantic ringing of my father's phone. I could hear him pacing in his office, his footsteps growing closer to the door every time he raked one hand through his thinning hair. It was a sound I had grown familiar with over the past few days. Each step seemed to resonate with a mix of desperation and simmering anger. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the feelings swirling around me. I was done being the support pillar, the invisible thread that held this family together. They thought they could lean on me forever, but now that I had handed down my ultimatum, they were finally facing their own shadows. With shaky fingers, I curled my hand into a tight fist, gripping the edge of the table in our sunlit kitchen. The warm light streaming through the window felt oddly detached, highlighting the dust that swirled in the air while casting shadows on the walls. I used to love sitting here with my family, discussing plans and dreams over pancakes and syrup, but now that very table felt foreign, marked by the heavy weight of unspoken resentments. I also remembered how routinely I had ignored those feelings, hoping for the day they would fade away. But they had grown strong, almost tangible, taking root in my heart and twisting like vines around my resolve. "Dad, how is it going?" My brother's voice broke through my thoughts, and I turned my head slightly to catch a glimpse of him leaning against the kitchen island, arms crossed tightly over his chest. His perfectly coiffed hair and meticulously pressed shirt hinted at the efforts he made to maintain the facade of control. Yet his eyes darted nervously around the room, betraying the uncertainty crawling beneath the surface. He tried to smile, yet it felt forced and clumsy, like his styled attire that clashed with the underlying tension in the air. "It's not good," my father snapped, the tension palpable even through the crack in the office door. "I will figure it out, I just need to think." The edge in his voice was sharper than I had ever heard before, a sign of the chaos that slowly seeped into his carefully constructed world. "Yeah, but you can't deny," my brother began, his tone faltering as he tried to assert himself, needlessly flipping a wrist as he spoke. "You can't deny that things are different now and you're going to have to adapt." I almost laughed at his attempt to sound wise, realizing that he had no real plan, executed only his need to put on a brave face, a behavior I found infuriatingly predictable. "Different, you think, that I have lost everything I worked for?" My father's voice cut through the air again, filled with uncharacteristic venom. The words were like jagged stones thrown at a glass wall, and the crack of his voice echoed in my ears, brightening my resolve. "You, both of you, have no idea how this feels. You don't understand the stakes." Sinking back onto the cushioned seat, I rested my head against the back, pondering my own role in this twisted game. With every minute that passed, I could see my father shaking beneath the weight of his choices, far too many of which had been made in the name of greed and blind ambition. I remembered the countless times I'd been brushed aside, my achievements overshadowed by their needs, and a sense of liberation washed over me. This was what I envisioned. A moment when they would finally comprehend the cost of their dependence, and I was no longer the one left to pick up the pieces. "Dad, you're going to have to start facing this," I finally piped up, my voice shaky yet assertive. I made sure to keep my eyes glued to the doorway as I spoke, letting the anticipation hang in the air. "You cannot keep burying your head in the sand. This is the result of your choices." The door opened slightly as my father emerged, his brows knitted together in disbelief. "Really? And you think you're the one doling out life lessons now?" His tone was biting, yet a flicker of uncertainty played across his features. It was terrifying and exhilarating to see that shift, as if I were unearthing a layer of vulnerability he had buried deep beneath his bravado. I took a deep breath, calculating my next words. "It is not a lesson, Dad," I replied, my tone cool and measured, unable to restrain the bitterness that crept in. "It's a fact. You have pushed me away for so long that I'm not sure you even know what support means anymore. I'm no longer bailing you out." He stepped further into the light, his demeanor shifting, almost pleading. "Amelia, I know I messed up." He hesitated, the words hanging in the space between us. I thought we could figure it out together. I thought you would always be there." His voice dropped, trailing off in emptiness. I held my ground, the feelings of betrayal resurfacing like a flood. "You thought wrong. I was never going to be the safety net for your choices. I deserve my own life, my own opportunities." I gestured between us, heart racing as I challenged the years of built-up expectations. "This isn't just about you or your business failures, it's about me reclaiming my freedom." My brother shifted uneasily, folding his arms tighter across his chest as if warding off invisible threats while he interjected. "Come on, Amelia, it was just a business deal gone wrong. Everyone has rough patches. We just need to pull together as a family." There was an exaggerated sincerity in his voice that felt uneasy to my ears. I almost wanted to laugh at his desperation to cling to the past, but I refrained, refusing to give in to his charm. "Pull together?" I scoffed, shaking my head. "What good is that if it is built on a foundation of lies and false expectations? Make no mistake, if this family mode of operation involves using me as your crutch, then I will no longer play that role." The silence that ensued was deafening, the air thick with uncommunicated words. I could feel their eyes on mine, the weight of their disbelief heavy against me yet liberating. The power shift crackled between us like static electricity, changing everything I had known about our family dynamics. I could almost taste the freedom on my tongue, bitter like an overripe fruit, but sweetened by the knowledge that I was no longer going to stand in their shadows. "No matter what you believe, you can't just walk away from this, Amelia." My father's voice was low now, almost pleading, a hint of desperation lining the edges. "You're part of this family, you always will be." "Not walking away from family. I'm walking towards myself," I replied, my chest tightening as I said the words. "If you want to save your business, then you must learn from it. I will not be your answer anymore." The finality in my tone was as soothing as it was terrifying, and I felt more victorious than ever, the rich satisfaction of turning the table on relationships that had for so long been one-sided. "But what about everything you've learned with us, the years of experience?" my brother pressed, brow furrowed. It all means something, doesn't it? We could still work together, just give it time. His defiance was quaint, almost admirable. He didn't realize that this was not about saving a business, nor was it about crumbling wealth. This was about the very fabric of our family being unraveled. I spent years playing second fiddle. I kept trying to earn love that should have been given freely. I shot back, my voice steady, unwavering. You never saw me as who I could be, but looked only for the ways I could serve you. This time I'm drawing the line. Those words hung in the air like a thundercloud, the gravity settling upon us. I could practically feel the tension rolling off their bodies as they grappled with the truth I had unveiled. The flicker of fear in my father's eyes had transformed into something deeper, a reluctant acknowledgement of my power. He had always viewed me as the obedient daughter, never fully aware of the storm brewing under the surface. At that moment, it struck me. I was not just reclaiming my independence, I was reclaiming my identity. Amelia, my father began again, but I cut him off. No, Dad. Just know I refuse to be the one you continually lean on. I waited so long for you to realize my worth, and now it's too late. You must face the consequences of your decisions without me. The silence spread, and I felt every heartbeat echoing softly through the stillness. I will no longer play the role of your savior. In that moment, I reveled in the irony of my previous years, where I felt like an invisible participant in a play that had gone awry. This was my stage now, and I was the main act, shining brighter than ever before. The roots of my family were twisted with expectations, but I refused to let them entwine around my dreams any longer. Then you truly are walking away? My father's voice was but a whisper, fuller of pain than ever before as he sank into the chair across from me. The gravity of the moment wrapped around us like a thick fog. If that is the case, what's left for us? For this family, I leveled my gaze at him, crystal clear in my intention. You are moving back towards each other for once. Find your way out of this mess on your own. You might find some strength and independence, just as I have in this moment. The truth hung heavy in the air, one we would have to confront in ways we had avoided for far too long. I could almost hear the tension of years unraveling before us, simmering promises and withheld love finally ready to erupt in a chaotic burst. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, brother. I stood tall, feeling the enormity of the choice I had made coursing through my veins. I was finally free, unburdened, and liberated, and despite the uncertainty ahead, I welcomed it with open arms. Weeks had passed since I first felt the weight of freedom, and as I cradled my phone in my hand, anticipation tingled in my stomach like a swarm of butterflies flapping their wings. The familiar ring cut through the tension in the air, each tone echoing the chaotic thoughts racing through my mind. When I picked up, I instantly recognized his voice, the one that had haunted me for years but now carried an unexpected mix of frustration and desperation. Amelia, he began, the edge of irritation thick in his tone. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, fingers gripping the edge of the desk, feeling the smooth oak against my skin. Talk about what, Dad? I replied, my voice steady but laced with the tremor of anticipation. I know I've made mistakes, he admitted, each word laced with a hint of remorse I had scarcely ever heard from him. I need to start paying you back. It's time I face the consequences of my actions and the debts I have. Debts or the debt? I interjected, savoring the taste of every syllable. You mean the one that has crushed our relationship for years? His silence felt heavy on the line, thickening the atmosphere between us. I could picture him pacing, hands running through his hair as the shame washed over him. Yes, Amelia, he finally sighed, his voice dropping. It's just, I don't know how it got this far. You thought what? That I would always be there to catch you when you fell? I could feel the fire simmering within me, fueled by memories of being pushed aside during family dinners, spoken to curtly, and my feelings overlooked. Let us be real here, you didn't think about me at all. His sigh morphed into a groan. I see that now, the burdens I've put on you, the expectations. I'm sorry, really. The word sorry felt foreign tumbling from his lips, but as cold and hard as concrete, I couldn't ignore the small flicker of vulnerability there. Do you even know how much money you owe me? My heart raced as I recalled the countless sacrifices I'd made to stabilize our shaky financial structure, all the while neglecting my own life and needs. He hesitated, then continued. I know it's a lot. I should have managed my finances better. Yeah, you should have, Dad. It's a little late for apologies. My muscles tightened and I leaned forward, digging my nails into my palms as I willed myself to remain calm. But guess what? You're finally facing the music. It's about time. I promise to start paying you back as soon as I can, he continued, his voice now getting that desperate edge I had not heard before. When can I expect this first payment then? I pushed, wanting to hear him on this rather than simply offer shallow promises. Next week, okay, $50, I can manage that. I'll work hard to get more, I laughed, a sound devoid of real amusement but heavy with the bittersweet taste of victory. $50, is that how you plan to repay the years of sacrifices and pain, the emotional toll? His voice dipped again, sounding smaller. I know it's not much, but it's a start. A start. I echoed, disbelief mixing with a strange satisfaction. After all that you put me through, you think I'll settle for a start? I will do better, I swear. He stumbled on his words, clearly abandoning his usual arrogance, and I could imagine his eyes darting, searching for an escape from this uncomfortable encounter. Do better, like how you've been doing for years, I replied, an unexpected calmness washing over me. Maybe I should have called you do better instead of Dad. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the sound of my deep breathing. I finally took a moment to consider his predicament. Just weeks ago, I was drowning in debt, grappling with my sense of self-worth and yearning for freedom. Now here I was, empowered. Look, I said, my tone softening slightly, I don't want to be a burden to you anymore. I don't want to play the role of the doormat. This is your chance to change things. I get it, Amelia, I understand. I'll do what I can. His voice cracked slightly, bringing an unexpected weight to the moment. Then prove it, $50 next week. I expect you to keep your word. Of course, I won't let you down. Right at that moment, a lightness surged within me, an exhilarating feeling that coursed through my veins. I had stood my ground, no longer afraid but free. You can do it, Dad, you just need to want it. And with that, I hung up the phone, feeling 10 pounds lighter. A soft breeze wafted in through the cracked window, carrying with it the scent of fresh rain and possibility. Days passed, each one layered with anticipation, as I watched my brother spiral down into a financial abyss. The gleaming sports car that once symbolized his carefree attitude was now just an anchor dragging him further into the depths of reality. I had heard whispers from friends about him posting it online for sale, and though I felt a twinge of guilt, after all, he was my brother, I couldn't shake the satisfaction that washed over me. Another week rolled by, each day stretching on like the long shadows cast by the evening sun. The moment I saw him pull up to my house, I couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration. He stepped out, his face scrunched into a frustrated grimace, hands shoved deep in the pockets of his designer jeans. Amelia, we need to talk, he said, his eyes darting around the driveway, looking for some semblance of escape just as my father had. It was almost ironic at this point, the tableau of our family's downfall all condensed into this moment. Talk about what? Selling your car? I smirked, letting the words roll off my tongue like honey. His frustration twisted into something darker. That was supposed to be my dream car. You have no idea what it feels like to have to get rid of it just because I can't float on what Dad left behind. Is that right? I leaned back against the door frame, crossing my arms. The confidence I had fought fiercely for was flooding back as I read the anger flickering behind his eyes. Have you ever thought about the countless dreams that were dashed when you didn't consider anyone else but yourself? Whatever, you don't understand. He shot back, voice raising as he paced in agitation. You just want to see me fail, do you? I shook my head. No, I want to see you finally face the consequences of your choices. I'm tired of being the slave to your whims, the doormat for a family that never acknowledged my worth. This right here is the reality you created. Suddenly he halted, a moment of realization wrapping itself around him like a quickly tightening noose. So this is it? You think my struggles are some kind of victory for you? There was resentment in his eyes, but beneath that, buried deep, was fear. Something like that, I replied coolly, holding my ground. It's about time the people in our family understand what their actions mean, the ripples they create. He opened his mouth, visibly at a loss for words, and for a moment I almost felt bad, almost, but the thrill of liberation shined bright against the shadows of guilt. I had cut myself free, now it was his turn. You think it's fair? He finally managed, voice lower now, reflecting the defeat that had seeped into his posture. To just watch me crumble like this. Fair? The single word echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Fair is far from what I'm handing out. You're finally confronting what you've done, and honestly, it's about time you sink or swim. As he turned on his heel and walked away, shoulders slumped, I knew this feeling well, power swelling within me, swelling into a tide I could never have imagined. I was finally freeing myself from the burdens my family had placed upon me without consideration, and with each step my brother took back toward his car, I felt the liberation become almost tangible. Weeks later, I was back at my desk, a fresh voice echoing in my ears. I had fought and clawed my way towards reclaiming my life, and the moments I had once dreaded were transforming into moments of clarity. I no longer felt trapped in the whirlwind of their chaos. They had to grapple with their decisions, and although it may have been a bitter pill for them to swallow, I was reveling in the satisfaction of a long overdue reckoning. I had learned the hard way that sometimes vengeance was not about malice but about self-preservation. And like a sweet breeze blowing through an open window, the taste of liberation spread through my every thought. I was ready to embrace a new and brighter chapter, one where I wielded the power to shape my story.